This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so going back to our screen, and all this is in your primer, but financial accounting is for external users. It's the whole organization. Managerial accounting is for the internal users for the area that they're working on. I've put in a number of terms, so when you see things and you're wondering what they are, you can come back and look at these terms. And you see in an organization, you got the president and you got product A, B, C, and D. So we're breaking it down by products. And then we have the administration. So we have to have financials for product A, B, C, and D. So it's a whole different, but externally we would merge all this together for outside. Well, we got to run each division. Job order costing. As we get into managerial accounting, different from financial accounting, where in financial accounting we looked at a service business, and then we looked at a merchandising company that bought inventory and sell it. When we look at managerial accounting, the big difference is that you got to make the product. Okay, there's a big difference. You got to make the product. So let's look at our managerial accounting cycle. Same general equation: assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity. But in the managerial accounting cycle, the first thing we're going to do is determine the unit product cost and selling price. That's what we're doing today. That's the first thing. And since sometimes people are a little slow on it, we're going to spend the first week. All we're going to do is determine unit product cost and selling price. And you should have a quiz on this probably at the start of class period on next Thursday. Determine the unit product cost and selling price. After we do that, it kind of needs to be correct. We make journal entries. We post to the ledger. We have some new accounts: raw materials inventory, work in process inventory, finished goods inventory, manufacturing overhead inventory. But we still got to make journal entries. We got to prepare a trial balance. Now we have some new statements we got to do. There's a cost of goods manufactured statement. How much did the items cost? There's a cost of goods sold statement. Then the income statement, statement of retained earnings, balance sheet, statement of cash flow. So we put the managerial accounting on top of the financial accounting. It's assumed that you know all of this, how to do income statements through statements of cash flows. And so that's why we reviewed it. And you prepare closing interest. So we got to do everything we did before and some more. There are two types of costs: product costs, period costs. These period costs are the costs that we looked at in Principles 1: marketing and selling, administrative, interest, and expenses. Product costs are the costs we look at when we make an item. And there are three fundamental product costs: direct materials, direct labor, manufacturing overhead. So what are the three product costs?
Direct materials,
direct labor, manufacturer overhead.
So those are the costs that we've got to calculate. And we're always calculating these costs on the basis of one item. We're calculating these costs on the basis of one item. So let's look at this book, and we'll assume it's the primer right now. It's here somewhere. But the bookstore buys the primer from me at a cost. Okay. Then they sell it to you. Sometimes you buy it virtual. But I buy paper, I buy ink, I hire some workers to put the book together. I have overhead such as my computer, my utilities, and I have to come up with a cost that this book will be sold to the bookstore for by the publisher. So I sell it at my cost. Now the bookstore could sell it to you at my cost, but they got their overhead. You know, they got workers, everything, so they have to mark it up some, and that's why they do that. But I get the bookstore buys it from me. They have a cost. They mark it up. I don't have a cost. I have paper, I have ink, and I have everything else. And I have to come up with a cost to sell it. So by next Thursday, you're going to have your product selected. So you had a little leeway on it. So you're going to have a product that you can make. And you're going to have to eventually tell me what are the raw materials for your product. What's the labor? How much is the labor to produce it? And then what's the overhead? Now, you having your product selected, turned into Blackboard is worth a easy 25 points. So you have to have a picture of it, a template, and a couple other things. I think that's in there. If not, I'll put it in there what's required. But that's one of the easiest 25 points that you're going to get this semester. Okay? So we make the product so we can get a better feel. It's always on a unit basis. So on your product, you have to tell me how much does it cost to make one of the items. So like I said, we started off with a service business. We were renting those cars. And then we did what? Sold some shoes. And now we're making the product and selling it. So a little bit more is involved. We got to determine what the raw materials are. We got to determine how much is the labor. Then all the other costs. The raw materials and labor, you know, these kind of direct costs, we kind of know what they are. But we also have to cost out every other cost because I got to cover these costs. So depreciation, utilities, taxes, insurance, rent, indirect labor, supplies, all of these indirect costs and any others, I've got to include all of that to come up with a unit cost. So let's look at these assumptions here. There's a product that's going to be priced at 3 times the unit cost. The product is going to be priced at 3 times the unit cost. And I'm planning on producing 100,000 units. The raw materials are 2 units at $15 each. The labor is 3 hours at $10 each. And when I add up all of these items, it's $600,000. Your job is to tell me what is my unit cost. So these were the costs that I incurred to get my primer ready for the bookstore. What is my cost to make one book? What is my cost to make one book? What?
$15? No, there's two. Half of 16 is 750, 650, 750.
So remember I told you it was ink and paper, so we're just kind of journaling doing it here, but suppose it takes 2 units at $15 each. So how much raw material going to be there in my book?
$15.
I gotta have units dollars each in my book.
30?
Yeah, 30 is about a number. So it's 2 units at $15.30. My direct labor is taking 3 hours to make it at $10 each. So if you work 3 hours and you paying $10, you pay $10 an hour, how much would you want?
$30.
If you work 3 hours and you pay $10 an hour, how much money might you want?
$30.
$90.
How much? I think you
30.
might want $30.
30.
Okay. Y'all try to make this hard. Now I got this 600,000 of overhead. How am I going to get that on a unit basis?
Oh, that should be $6 per
I
unit.
get $6.
That's the overhead divided by the number of units produced, which is 100,000 units.
100,000 units. The overhead is 600,000. So simply 600,000 divided by 100,000 gives us an overhead of $6 each. So our total cost is what?
6.
No,
66. And if our selling price multiple, what's our selling price multiple? 3 times the unit manufacturing cost. So our selling price multiple is 3. So what we're gonna sell it at?
198.
198. So if you can do that in this course, you'll have no problem in understanding manufacturing accounting. Our raw material, it's always on a unit basis. Our raw materials is 30, our direct labor was 32, manufacturing overhead 6, because we simply calculated. We'll get a little more details on it. We add it together and get a selling price. Does everybody see that? Is anybody who does not see that? Of these 24 people who own it, 23 people. Does everybody understand that?
So far, I do. I just think I just have to do it again. See it again.
Just have to do it. Anybody else understand?
I do.
Okay. All right. So actually, we do have this little table that we use. So if the per unit requirement is 2, and the unit rate we said was on raw materials is 15. So you're going to use a table like this to come up with your raw materials, 30. We're going to do the same thing with our labor. The per unit requirement is 3. Unit rate is $10. So we get $30 again. So we'll have a little table like this to work on it. Now the manufacturing overhead, because a lot of times we're going to make more than one product. A lot of times. Okay, so if you're making more than one product and you got that same 600,000 applying to all of the products, then you're not going to be able to divide the quantity produced into the total manufacturing overhead that we just did. Because you got, that 600 may have to be allocated among a lot of products. So what we do is, a lot of times we're going to estimate the overhead based on direct labor hours. Okay? So to get the total, to get, a unit overhead rate, we first of all start with the total overhead. And we said that was 600,000. Okay, so the total overhead was 600,000. Okay, the quantity that we are making, we said was what? 100,000. So the quantity. So we were making 100,000. And then we had a productivity rate was 3. That is, it took us 3 hours. It was going to take us 3 hours to make this quantity. And so the total hours that the workers are going to work is going to be what? They got to produce 100,000. It takes 3 hours per product. So they're going to have to work 300,000 hours. And so what we're going to do is to come up with a predetermined overhead rate, which is called a POR. And that overhead rate is going to be based on dividing the total overhead by line for the total hours. We're going to divide the total overhead by the total hours. And so we're going to get a predetermined overhead rate of 2. Okay. So the rate that we're going to have in this formula is going to be 2. We're based on the labor hours, so we'll bring down the labor hours. So we can use other bases, but we're just using the labor hours. So we multiply 3 times 2, we get the unit overhead cost at 6. So it's the same as we had here, but because we may be making more than one product, and we will in the next chapter, we won't be able to say we made 100,000 of this unit, 200,000 of these, 50,000 of these, and add those quantities together. A better way to allocate this overhead is going to be based on the number of hours that are worked. And so what we do is we bring down the hours that are being worked is here, 3 hours. We get the overhead, total overhead, get the quantity 100,000, multiply it by the 3 hours. We're gonna have to work 300,000 hours. So 3 and the 6 give us 2. Then 2 times 3 gives us 6. That is actually how we're going to allocate the overhead, because we also got to make journal entries and things like that. So we're going to be using hours to make that. So just hang with me on that. We'll go back over it next time. But this is how we actually calculate that unit product cost. Move this back to 3. Then we multiply 3 times the 66, and we got what? 198. And the POR was 2. So on your quiz next time, a week from now, you're gonna have to get me the unit cost, selling price, and POR. You're gonna have to calculate those things. The unit cost, selling price, and POR. Okay. Are there any questions?
You said next week, Tuesday?
Can you do another example?
Yep, we're getting ready to do another example.
Okay, what day is the quiz gonna be on? You keep bringing up.
What day is the quiz gonna be on? Probably. One that counts will be at the start of the period on Thursday. So we may practice some next week. You may have team homework problem to work on next week, but the quiz will be a week. I mean, we're just making a little calculation, right? You should be able to knock this out, right? Okay, let's change our example around. And when we change the example around, one of the nice things about Word, I can scratch through it. Let's assume that you can make so the hour rate is still $10 an hour. But let's assume that you can make 5 per hour. Everything else is the same. The product's going to be priced at 3 times the unit manufacturing cost. Expected production is 100,000. The raw materials is 2 units at 15. but the labor rate is $10, but you're expected to make $5 per hour. Total manufacturing overhead is still $600,000. So if we had that situation, how are things gonna change? Let me see what I want to do here. So we're going to insert some columns to the right. Okay. So what I want you to do is to make those same calculations with our new assumptions. So you're doing the same thing. So we're looking at another example, but in this example, you're making $5 per hour. So rather than it's taking you 3 hours, you're making $5 per hour. How does that change things? Well, what doesn't change?
Materials.
All right, raw material stays the same thing. You can make, it takes 2, and the unit rate is 15. So it stays at 30. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Well, Mendez, what's the labor gonna be?
The labor will be 5 per unit. Requirement 5 hours, right?
Well,
No,
the labor rate is still $10.
no, the 5 hours, right? Times the 10 be 50. No,
It's gonna be 50 now.
it's gonna be 50, right?
Yes.
It'd be 5. The per unit requirement is 5.
What if you went to the store and you bought 5 cups like this for $10?
Mm-hmm.
How much did each cup cost?
10.
I said you bought 5 cups for $10 total.
Oh, 5 for 10 total.
150.
10. Oh, each cup costs what's that about 5? 25. 20. Would it be 250?
Yeah. How many cups I said you bought?
No. It can be 250. $2?
$2.
$2? Sorry.
So if you have a worker who you're paying $10 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
you can make 5 things per hour.
Oh,
How much are you paying him per item?
$2.
Per hour? That should be 50
50.
for 1
You said
hour.
You're gonna run your business bankrupt.
No, you said for 1 hour?
So you telling me then that you're gonna hire work at $10 an hour, and they supposed to make 5 things per hour. So
you're
you're
just
gonna pay
breaking it.
$50 an hour. So you're gonna pay them $50 an hour. So
You're
they're
just breaking it
regular
down.
$50, but you're gonna be generous and pay them $50 an hour.
The total. I'm talking about the total, sir.
The total is 10.
Okay. You're paying the workers $10 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
They make 5 of these per hour. So how much cost is in one book?
$10.
No, for one is $10.
This one is $10. So do we
Is
need
it
to
50?
multiply?
Let's see if we can look at it again. Then I go back to my cups.
Oh, Lord help us.
You're supposed to make 5 cups an hour, and you
Okay.
pay them $10 an hour. The worker is supposed to make $5 per hour, and you paying them $10. What is the cost of that worker for each cup?
$2 per cup.
It's $2.
$2.
Thank you. $2.
$2. That's the total divided.
Now you got to remember, everything is on a unit basis. How much did it take?
Got you.
Did it take to make 1 cup? So the per unit requirement it is 5, but because you have a situation where it's 5 per hour, you can make more than 1 in an hour. You're gonna divide 5 into 10 to get 2.
Mm.
So in this situation, they work 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. And they get $10.
But if you got a situation where they're making more than 1 in an hour, then you divide. So I gotta always keep that in mind.
My Lord.
He's always doing great things.
Come on.
Learning great things and providing wonderful knowledge, managerial accounting knowledge at this time.
Come on.
Okay. So on every problem, you got to decide, is it 3 hours to make it, or is it 5 per hour? If it's 3 hours, more than 1 hour, 1 or more hours to make it, then you're going to multiply, as we did here. But when we can make more, when we can make 5 per hour, then we're going to divide. Now, if you can learn that, you can make an A on that quiz next week. You will make an A on the quiz if you can just make that determination of when to multiply and when to divide. Okay. Let's move on to the overhead now. So the overhead is still 600,000. Okay. And the quantity is still, what, 100,000. But, and we said the production rate, it wasn't 3 hours. But it was 5 per hour. So all you management majors in here, if they got to produce 100,000 and the production, they're making 5 per hour, how many hours do you want these workers to work before you get upset? So you're running a business.
20,000 hours?
Yeah, it sounds good. You want them to work no more than 20,000 hours, or you would be upset. That if they're producing 100,000, then you do not want them working recording and everything. Okay.
So basically, you're dividing 100,000 by 5, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So you divide again. So you either multiply and you keep on multiplying, or you divide and you keep on dividing. So now when we calculate the POR, it's going to be 600 divided by 20,000. So what's 600 divided by 20,000?
30.
600 or 2 into 60.
That's 30.
Okay, so now our POR is 30. Yep, the per unit requirement is 5, but it's 5 per hour. So you're going to divide again, 5 into 30, and you're going to get 6 again. But when we do the total product cost now, it's 38 as opposed to 66. Our POR, as we said, is 30. And what's our selling price now if the multiple is 3? $114, maybe?
114.
Okay. So you can,
114.
when you take a lot of hours to make it, your cost goes up, so your selling price goes up. But when you can make more than 1 an hour, the cost goes down, selling price goes down.
Does this go in hand with operation management? Because this is what we learning right now in that class.
Yeah, but what we're doing is an operation management. You sort of assume or you're told what these costs are. But in manufacturing accounting, managerial accounting, we're calculating what these costs are based on the data. So
Gotcha.
what are you all doing production.
Well, I mean, you know, in that class, it's just mainly the whole of operation management. And this is what they do. They try to figure out how to cut the cost, but produce more and
Yeah. So that's
whatnot
why.
effectively.
Okay. So these would be what's called, where am I saying that? These are the standard costs, okay? And so there's two things involved. When we get to actual results, we want it to be less. We want you to buy the raw materials at a cheaper price. We want the laborers to produce more units, okay? And that's how we cut costs, and then we can try to cut down. So you're right. They're looking at these numbers and coming up with ways, and we'll do that a little bit at the end of the course. How do we reduce the numbers? Okay. But these are our best guess of what they are. Are there any questions? Let me see if everybody understanding here. Does everybody understand what we're doing?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, what about your team members? Do they understand it? So why did I ask that? Why did I ask that? Somewhere else some things here, but suppose you have 5 people on a team. I'll just put it here. And suppose I assign one of these calculations to each person on the team. Then I get the grade by combining what everybody did, since y'all got these teams and y'all working so well together and everything. So that's how we operate the quiz next Thursday. Each person on the team will work one situation out. Then we'll combine it and submit that in and see how it looks. So has everybody got that down now? Good. Okay, next class period. I think this is in the primer, this unit cost, selling price, and POR in-class problem. I think this is.
Yes, sir. It's in there. I'm looking at it.
All right. So all the teams practice on that next time. So I can call on any member of your team to explain it. Any situation. So I'll be going through the teams. Then if I can get to the back of this. Manufacturing chart of accounts could be a little helpful there. These are these statements. I think that's an example. So somewhere in the primer, don't worry about the multiple choice yet. Apply manufacturing overhead 1, 2, 3, 4. Here they go. 10, 5, and 10, 6. So teams 1 through 4, y'all are responsible for 10, 5. And I can call on anybody on your team to work it out. Teams 7 through, 5 through 8, you all are responsible for exercise 10, 6. And I can call on any member of your team to work one of those out. So there's a situation for every team. We got 8 teams. So we got 4 homeworks here, so this is one of these homework I don't take up. I call on your team for one of these to answer it. That's the grade for the team on this homework. So 10, 5, and 10, 6 are due next time. So I did take it ahead of time, so I was nice. Now I didn't just drop this on you on Tuesday. So the first part of the class, we'll work collegiately together on the in-class problem. So we get a better understanding. Then the second part of the class, I'm gonna call on each team, a member of each team, to work out one of these situations. So teams 1 through 4, y'all got 10, 5. Team, 5 through 8, y'all got 10, 6. And that'll be your 10 homework points. Then you have a quiz on it on Thursday.